Let me tell you about Shiba. Did you hear about any other cases similar to this one?
Detective Helen's Gruss case is the only one in the world. We have a unique set of circumstances here where we have a police officer who is alive and aware of issues with the COVID-19 vaccinations. She's cognizant of the fact that there's been a Toronto sick kids policy that was issued in November of 2021 for children with myocarditis. And the hospital had that policy to treat children with myocarditis because they knew that the COVID-19 vaccinations caused enlarged hearts in children. And then we had an expert, a virologist, Dr. Byram Bridle, publish an affidavit also in November of 2022, mentioning that there were risks associated with administering the COVID-19 vaccinations to pregnant and breastfeeding women because there was no data to show that it was safe. Although in May of 2021, our government, the Canadian government, had a special committee that said it was safe, but they had no evidence. They had evidence to the contrary. And almost all the babies died. All the babies died of women that fell pregnant during the clinical trials. So it's important to understand that pregnant women were not tested. They were not formally part of the clinical trials. But about 300 women did fall pregnant or were pregnant at the time of the trials. And Pfizer did capture some data, not all of the data. They only captured data from 32 pregnancy outcomes out of the almost 300 women. And my thoughts on that is because they didn't want to know anymore. They didn't want to know that perhaps potentially almost 300 babies had died. But out of those 32, only one survived. Out of the known outcomes, only one baby survived. And that's telling. That tells us that this COVID-19 vaccination was not safe for pregnant and breastfeeding women. And so when the government says it's safe, then babies are dying. In fact, in Ottawa Police Service, so this is unique. When you say, is this case anywhere else? Well, this is normally police confidential information, but because Helen's been charged with misconduct, and this is the evidence been used against her, the evidence now is in the public. So we know that between May of 2021 and January of 2022, that there was a tripling in sudden infant deaths in the sphere of the police, right? Where we got to distinguish between what happens at home with the baby and then what happens in a hospital. Those are two separate statistics. And in fact, the Ontario coroner hasn't released statistics between what I call as the COVID era for baby deaths in the hospitals. And so this is a unique situation where we have a police officer who is an excellent police officer. All of her performance reviews state that she is a brilliant team worker and an excellent investigative police officer. And she's alive to the fact that there may be issues with these COVID-19 vaccinations. She cares deeply about the public. So when she's told by her colleagues that there's a tripling in sudden infant deaths in January 2022, she looks into the system to see what the cause is, what the pattern is. And she is suspended within 2 weeks. And there's no other case like this in the world where you've got a police officer working in a unit that investigates sudden infant deaths, where that information, that pattern comes to that police officer's attention, and that she simply asked the question. She wasn't even running an investigation. She was simply asking the question, and she was charged with misconduct.
Well, it's just to remind again my audience, Brian Bridle, virologist, vaccinologist also, he was also a guest of mine, and we were talking about censorship mostly. But what is important, when I was recording the show about Pfizer documents, I was writing down to our government and to our officials. That means they knew from already February 2023 all these details, because I sent them directly, and they can't say they don't know what was happening and what was in Pfizer documents.